Ukraine has very publicly switched its tactics in its war against Russia. But just what do those tactics look like on the battlefield, and how effective are they? We're going to be taking a look at some drone footage that shows those tactics in action, up close and personal. Let's get right into it, guys. Okay, so this is coming to us from a UAV company of the 92nd Mechanized Brigade. These guys are fighting near Bakhmut. They tag it as Bakhmut Oblast, but Bakhmut isn't an oblast, so it's already a little weird. But these are some of their what are called FPV or first-person view drones. These drones are laden with explosives and are basically just remote piloted missiles. So as you can see, hold on, let's get this motivational music down a little bit. You can see they're identifying the targets here, and this is an edit after the fact, obviously, illustrating that it's a small Russian, looks like a logistics truck. I might think of it as like a mechanic's truck or a small cargo hauler. So you can see here it identifies this Russian truck. And what's interesting about this to me is that it's moving totally solo. It's moving alone across this roadway. It doesn't have an escort. It's not part of a convoy. So this tells me that it's likely a decent way behind the front line, that this is a part of a logistics operation to get either men or material to or from the front lines. As you can see, the drone targets it, moves in, and then the signal is lost. Obviously, they've got to edit parts out because of the YouTube terms of service. So here we have another view. You can see an observation drone notices that a Russian combat vehicle, this is a BMP-2, an APC with a large autocannon, is also moving again solo, not part of a convoy. So this tells me that this isn't a vehicle that's attacking. It's a vehicle that's moving up to the front line, moving into attack position, maybe as part of preparation for an offensive. But you can see Ukraine's drones getting ahead of it, right? They're not waiting for these attacks to happen. When Russia wants to launch an attack, it has to mobilize the troops, mobilize their equipment, move it into position, prepare that unit for its attack, and then launch the attack itself. So when you have that, what you end up with is a situation like what we're seeing here, where a lot of movement begins along some of these key roadways. Ukraine knows, right? When we can look at a map and we can do the same thing that Ukrainian intelligence will be doing, basically. They will pull up. Here is a map of Ukraine, right? And you can see all of these little symbols here represent axes of attack. So in all likelihood, this is a Russian. These forces are being allocated to a Russian attack that was going to take place probably along this H-32 highway, right? So you know that if Russian forces are going to attack along the H-32 highway, that basically there's only a couple of routes where they can pre-position their forces. Basically this route and this route. So if you have drones on station and can observe these approaches, you can spoil the attack. It's literally, that's the term in NATO doctrine. It's called a spoiling attack. But you can spoil the attack before it ever gets started, before it ever actually pushes into contested territory, by catching them unawares, as we're seeing the drones do here, right? They ID the BMP, and now an attack drone begins its run. And you could see the static. I actually think this static is part of a Russian counter drone system. I think some Russian vehicles are equipped with a basic system to distort drone signals, because a huge portion of the drones I see doing these attack runs develop this static, right? And also sometimes have these different warnings, like a low battery warning, just a bunch of warnings flashing that seem kind of unlikely. Right, so it takes out the drone. We're just going to skip ahead just a smidge because there's just a little bit of it shows a hit, and we can't show that on YouTube. But guys, if you have been watching this channel for any length of time, you know that the holidays are upon us, and you're going to need some energy and focus to deal with listening to your family members' hot takes about a war they haven't really studied at all. Maybe they saw one news article. So if you need that energy, look no further than Strike Gum. It's a veteran-owned company, namely owned by this veteran here, made in the USA at a facility in Denver. It is a great alternative to these. overpriced like energy drinks. This was $4 a pop, guys. It has 160 calories. Basically, all of it is sugar, 41 grams of sugar, which is absolutely mind blowing. And for all that, you get like 100 milligrams of caffeine in this giant thing. In this pack alone, there are 5 pieces of gum, and each one contains 90 milligrams of caffeine, 100 milligrams of alpha GPC. But what it doesn't contain is any sugar. And so, if you're interested in a objectively superior energy drink alternative, you want to check us out at strikegum.com. Best of all, though, 50% of the profits from this first production run I'm donating to charities that support Ukrainian civilians who have been injured or displaced in the conflict. And if you're someone who needs some serious energy drinks to get through the holidays, you should definitely check out the tray because it's the best deal. Instead of a $4 energy drink to get your 90 milligrams of caffeine, you can get each one of these for like less than 90 cents each if you apply a military discount. So check us out, strikegum.com. Okay, let's take a look at this next target. You can see it's another Russian logistics target. Another Russian logistics vehicle. You can see Russia starting to repurpose these civilian vehicles. These are what we would call a 5-ton. Basically because of its cargo capacity, can carry about 5 tons of cargo. And you can see the drone spotted it pretty quickly. We're seeing it very late in the strike, but it comes in from behind, and you can see, again, it's starting to get those same error messages flashing. The static starts to hit, but it's just, it's too late. Again, this is an unarmored vehicle, so you can hit it basically anywhere. But you'll see in some other footage, right, here's an armored version of that, a Kamaz. You can see again, the tactics seem consistent. There's an observation drone that identifies the target. Then there's a strike drone that actually strikes the target. And this is, again, a function of the fact that these observation drones, very lightweight. They loiter for a long time just looking. And then Ukrainians must have these drones either in the air or can quickly get them to fly fast and not for a long time and get into these targets and take them out. So that seems to be the protocol, right? And the strategy, again, for Ukrainians is to just make it so that Russian forces they have to move, right? Russia wants to be on offense. They want to incur the casualties. They need to move trucks. They need to move troops. They need to move material across the battlefield. But as they do, Ukraine just sits and waits. And if you can imagine there's this many drones behind the lines, imagine how many drones are sitting there in Ukrainian positions just ready to constantly pound any Russian forces that try to mobilize. And remember, because Ukrainians can use mines now, because they're not on offense, they can create these canals, these channels, where they say, we don't need to guess where the Russians will be. We know that we've mined to the left, to the right, we've mined all these roads and fields, so we know that there's one channel that the Russians are going to pass through, and we're going to have our drones sit, and just every time they come, that we're going to just ping them with these drones. It's brutally effective. Remember, each of these drones cost about $700. Okay, so that means that literally, we're not talking about a tank. If you were to put out a Ford Taurus, right, like a U.S. consumer vehicle, you would be looking at, let's see, so the price of, let's say you spent $35,000 on like an F-150. Instead, you could spend that money and buy 50 of these drones, right? That means that for the price of a Ford Focus, you could take out literally an entire battalion's worth of armored vehicles. This is why drone math just hits different, guys. When we talk about drones being the future of war, this is why. We are watching Ukraine, in this case, expend maybe $2,000, maybe $3,000 a gear. And we are watching them incur millions of dollars in damage. A BMP-2, 2 of these heavy equipment logistics vehicles, 2 light logistics vehicles. Yeah, you're looking at $1 million of gear blown up easy. Ah, damn, I wasn't even supposed to show that. Okay, look at this. Again, and some of these vehicles, right, they're logistics vehicles. They get parked, people offload them, they gotta refuel. There's just nowhere safe in the battlefield. Again, this is a classic. Oh yeah, it looks like, yeah, as it points out here, right? Just a casual day of operations, a BMP, and like 5 logistics vehicles, really just a sign that how hard it is. This is why it's so hard for Russia to get offensive action going anywhere across the front lines. Anyway, that's all I had, guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.